All right, hello everybody. This is going to be the case, making the case for the multi-section flatback binding. So we have our text block finished with our end bands on, and we are now going to make the case. It's a separate piece. So if you look at one of these books, this is the case on the outside, this piece here. So we make this and then we take the text block and glue it in place. And there's a process for that, which will be a separate video. But that's what we're doing today is just, I'm going to show you how to make this exterior part. Okay, so the first thing you've got to do is cut your boards. And you need your binder's board. And there are specific measurements for this that are based on the text block. So we're going to take those measurements from the text block. And what you want to do is you want to have your text block, your boards, sorry, be the height of the text block. So not including the end bands, but just the height of the text block plus 4 millimeters. So what I typically do is I will just lay my board on to the text block and then make a tick mark at the height. And I'm just making like a small tick mark there like that. And then that's going to tell me the height. I could also, because I know that this is supposed to be 5.5 inches, I could just put that on my board as well. Just take the measurement and transfer it to the board with the same tick mark. So then what I'm going to do is add 4 millimeters to that. So I will put my millimeter ruler up against that and then pull it away just a little bit so you can see. Sometimes what it looks like on the camera and what it looks like to my eye is not the same thing. But okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 millimeters. So I'll just make a small tick mark. And what I usually do is make that a longer mark like that so that I know, that's the height and this is plus 4 millimeters. And so again, I already know what the height or what the grain direction is on this board, but I could go ahead and mark it. So I'm putting the height running along the same direction as the grain. And so then we're going to do the same thing with the width, a similar thing, but instead of making it larger, we're going to actually make it smaller than the width. Okay, so this is the height. And if you check that against it, it should be a little bit taller than the height of the book. And it really is going to about match the height of the end bands. So it's the height of the book plus 4 millimeters. And then to set the width, you're going to do the width of the book minus 2 millimeters. So the text block again is 4 1/4. So I could put that measurement on and then subtract 2 millimeters, or I could just do it by hand like this. Just lay my board on top and then make a small tick mark. Now, you have to be a little careful because, if you look here, if you guys can see, that is a little bit wider here. Actually, the text block itself and those end sheets are a little shorter. So I don't know. In this case, I might go ahead and do that 4 1/4 because I know that's the overall measurement. You might have to take a couple of measurements if you do it this way. I mean, that looks pretty close. So I'm going to go with that tick mark that I made. And then I'm going to subtract 2 millimeters from that. So again, this is hard to do and hold it up to the camera. So I'm going to just do it on the surface and then I'll show you. So I just line up my millimeter ruler to it and then subtract 2, and then I'll make that long mark. So there it is. So that's going to be my width and this is going to be my height. So what I could do is just take a little scrap piece because I need to do 2 of these. So I could cut my height. I've got this here and I can use my triangle and just go ahead and cut all the way across for the height of the book or for the height of the board. However, I don't want to I'll be cutting that width and then I won't have it for the second one. So I can go ahead and transfer this measurement just by using a strip of paper. And I can take, I'm lining it up to the end of the board here, and then I'll transfer that measurement onto this. And that way I can have that again when I'm ready to cut the second one. I could go ahead and put the mark on there even, but just in case, I'm not gonna do it, but it's because I barely, I'm getting really close here to the end. I've got like a little less than 1/8 of an inch to trim. So I'm just getting it right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this cut. And use my triangle to square this up. And again, I could do the same thing. I'd need a longer piece probably to do that, but I could, if I don't have a triangle long enough, I could transfer that measurement. Maybe I will just do that. Take a little scrap and transfer the measurement to this piece of paper. And then make another tick mark further down to line up. Because I'm not sure I can get all the way across even with my triangle. So I think I'll do it this way. I'll grab my ruler. Oh, it's already up here. And that's this way I'm going to cut the height. So I'm going to put my knife into that cut, that mark, and then I'm going to cut the height. And then here's my measurement. And this time I am going to use the square because it's taller. I've got plenty of room there. So I'm going to use the triangle for that. And I'm really putting it kind of almost inside the mark. It's right on top of it, but I can still see a little bit of it, a little bit of the pencil mark. So then I'm going to cut this. So I'm being careful to hold it in place because this doesn't have a cork back. So it can slide easily if you're not keeping a firm grip on it. So keep that tight. And then this is going to be my other measurement. So I can transfer to it. And like I said, I'm really close with that. Hopefully you won't cut it as thin as I did as far as the piece. I just had that piece and I thought, yeah, it's wider than what I need. So, and it is, but it's just, I didn't realize I was that close. So it's all right. It's like a 16th of, maybe a little more than a 16th. Okay, and then I'm going to trim that. Believe it or not, that's actually hard to do, trim off a little edge like that. Okay, and there's my two boards. They should be the same size. Okay, so that's my boards. Now I'm going to measure for the spine to make the spine piece. So let me get out the little sample. So I got to measure for this piece that goes inside, how we put the spine together. So I need to measure for that. It's Bristol. This is that folder card or the Bristol card that's inside there. And that's what I'm going to cut next. So the way I measure for that, and this is another time I need a little scrap of paper to help me measure. I'm going to take one board and the text block, and I'm going to lay one of those boards on top of the text block. And this is going to be the measurement that I take. So you might feel like, oh, I'll just measure back here. But this is really, really wide compared to what we want it to be when we case this book in. And if you look, so there's a groove in here, a little joint where it goes down. And if you try to take the measurement with the board plus the width of the spine, it's going to be too wide. And we don't want that. We want it to be, so when we case this in, it gets squeezed really tight. And if you've got this little wedge shaped spine, it's kind of like with the drum leaf, how I was talking about, you actually have to cut it a little bit smaller So that's why you're not going to measure with both boards. You're going to just measure with one. And you're also going to take the measurement about right here in the book, like a little bit down from the end band on the top of the book. So it's a little bit confusing to people because, you know, it's a little bit illogical and to your, you know, it just doesn't make intuitive sense, but it does. This is the way to do it. So I'm just setting the board on top of the text block just to take the measurement. And then I take my strip of paper and I just lay it on top and fold it. And at that fold, those little fold lines, that's what the width of this is going to be. And so sometimes I'll take my pencil and right at the corner, right where they connect, I'll make, or not even connect, but just fold over. There's like a little crease right there. That's going to be the width right there. So there it goes. Okay, and that's going to be the width of my spine piece. All right, so I'm going to set this to the side, the text block and the boards. And now I'm going to bring up that material, that folder card, and transfer this measurement to it. So the grain is running long on this piece, and I can always lightly mark it if I need to. So I'm going to take that measurement and put it on here because I want the spine to be along the grain like this, but the width is going to go on like that. So I can see that this is really square too. So if you've got a little piece of this folder card or the Bristol or whatever it is that you're using for this, make sure you've got a 90-degree angle at some point. And this one is very square, so I don't need to square it up. But if you put the triangle on and there's a slant to any side, just square off an edge real quick before you make this cut. Just so you know that you're taking a measurement from a straight side. So I'm just going to cut the width right now. I'm just transferring that measurement on here. Tick mark, tick mark. And then I'm going to cut that piece. And so I'm going to rotate it so that most of my material is under my ruler. And then I'm just cutting off this little piece that I'm relatively smaller to the rest of the card size. So I just put my knife into the mark and then I slide my ruler up to the other one. And then I just hold it steady and cut. And I just prefer to make a few cuts gently because then I'm not going to be knocking my ruler, you know, hopefully. If you try to cut all at once, that you have a tendency to push one way or the other with the blade. So that helps avoid that. Okay, so now this is the width of the spine piece. And then I want it to be the same height as the boards. So typically what I do is I'll just take my board and lay it on top of the piece. Just line it up at the bottom here. And then just hold it down very firmly right where I'm going to cut and then just cut across. But again, I'll do a few cuts so that I'm not pulling the piece underneath. And that's my little spine piece. Okay. Oh, I feel like maybe I pulled it a little bit. No, it's okay. All right. So there's my piece. Oops. Looks like my camera went away for a second. Hold on, let me pause this and see what's going on. All right, that took a few minutes to resolve, but all right. So we have cut our boards, we have cut our spine piece, and now we've got to cut the lap component, which is, if you look at the structure of one of these books, let me pull one out that's not horizontal, that looks more like what we're going to make. You can see this joint, and inside you can see the spine piece here, but what creates the joint is the boards, and then there's this little component inside that's just a strip of paper that allows us to put the spine piece here and the boards on top of that lap component. And you know, it'll all make sense when we put this thing together. So we've got to cut a strip of Mohawk or text paper that is going to allow us to do this and make this little part. So we need a piece of Mohawk. And you just need to be able to cut something that's about 3 inches wide, maybe 2.5, 3 inches wide, and the height of the board. So normally what I do, let me just check that my grain, yeah, the grain's running like this on this piece. And I want it to match, I want the grain direction of the Mohawk to match, of the lap component to match the board grain. So like this, so this is grain, this is the grain of this. Put that down. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just kind of lay my board on top of the piece of Mohawk and then just cut this out because it needs to be this height and about this width. And so I'll just almost like block off what I want to cut and then just cut that like this. So, and I do this even when I have access to a cutter because this is just quicker and it's inside the book. I mean, you want it straight, but you know, again, we're just using this. This is a piece that's part of the structure of the book. Okay, so that's our piece. And now what we've got to do is glue this little spine piece, the Bristol, onto this piece of Mohawk. So take our glue. Just a little, I just need a little scrap piece to glue with, and I'm just going to use that scrap I was measuring with. And I just need a little bit of glue here. And I glue the spine piece. And then I'm going to glue it to the center of the lap component. So once I get it all gluey, and there's a little bit heavy right there, I'm going to wipe that off. And I'm going to put this strip away, out of my way. Then I glue this to the center of the lap component. And so I just try to get it centered in there as much as possible. And if it's not perfectly centered, that's okay, because the boards are now going to get glued to this. So what I want to do is I'm going to take my bone folder and bone fold that down tightly. And then the next steps that I'm going to do, I'm going to flip this piece face down, and I'm not going to turn it back over again. That's a very important note, is to not flip this back over. You don't want to look at this Bristol piece anymore until we get the boards glued to the piece. Okay, so you don't want to see this anymore until we've completely glued on the boards. So I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to bone fold up against the spine piece inside or underneath, and I'm just scoring up against it. And then sometimes I'll even like take a little pencil and make a mark in that little groove that I'm finding right here. It's kind of hard to see that from that distance in the light, but that's what I've done. I've just bone folded that so that the spine piece is popping up through the paper. So there you go. And sometimes I'll take a pencil and I'll just make a little mark where, because I'm going to start measuring in just a second. And sometimes I lose that when I start putting a ruler up against it. I can't see it anymore. So I make little pencil marks. It's no big deal. Probably can't even see them, but they're there. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from that little groove that I just scored into it. I'm going to measure out 6 millimeters on each side of the spine piece. So I just take my little ruler and I'm going to measure out 6 millimeters. So that's just one little tick mark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then make a tick mark. Then come down to my other mark. And then measure out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Make a tick mark. Then I flip it. Measure out 6 millimeters. And 6 millimeters. And then I'm going to draw a line. So where those tick marks, the new ones that I made are, I'm going to make a line. Just draw a line. and draw a line. And then we're going to glue on the boards. So this is one of my boards. This is the other one. And still, this is face down. Move my ruler out of my way. And I'm going to glue up one edge of the board. And all I'm going to be doing is gluing this, and then I'm going to be laying it on top of that line that I just drew. So like this. Okay, but I've got to glue up. It's about 1 inch, maybe a little less, that I need to glue up on the board. So I'm just going to take my brush and glue out a little strip. And again, you want it to be thin, but evenly covered. And if it's a little gluey past that width, that's okay. So I'm going to do it on this side first because I can see. And I'm just laying this down on the line. And that's it. Okay, and I'm not even going to flip it over yet. I'm just going to use my bone folder on this side. And then I'll just rotate it so that I can do the other side. And I'm going to glue that board. Just the edge. And then I'm going to put this in place. And that's that. And now I can flip this over and I can just bone fold this down on the other side. That's it. So now you can see this is why we did it that way. So now we've got that little groove here and the boards are on top of the lap component and the spine piece is inside, and that's going to go up against the text block. So now is a good time you can check to make sure that your boards fit, that your book fits into the case. And it has a little bit of a foredge here and a little bit of an edge at the top and bottom, and that's the way it should work. So that's it, okay? All right, so that's the case, just the structure made. Whoops, kind of stuck to the book a little bit, that's all right. Now we're gonna cover the case. So we've got to put our cover materials on, and we're gonna start with the book cloth. Okay, so we've made the foundation, kind of the architecture underneath, and now we're gonna put the covering materials on. So I need a piece of book cloth that all it needs to be is the height of the boards plus 1.5 inches taller. So you can see this is too big. I can cut this down a little bit, and I am going to. I'm gonna turn this over, and I'm just gonna lay it on the board. And then I can just use my mat and measure about 1.5 inches taller. So I'm going to just make a tick mark here and down here. And then I'm just going to cut that excess off just to do it. So whatever your board height is, this book cloth and your paper as well need to be the height of the board plus 1.5 inches. And that's just going to be enough to give you a nice turn in, an even turn in. And so for each book, it's going to be a little bit different. Let me grab out these little samples. I tend to do them, about the same every time. I just kind of have the way that I like them to look. But you just need a piece of cloth that's wide enough that you kind of have to visualize what you want this to look like. And it's hard to do that when you've never made one before. I usually do about 3/4 inch past the board. You can see that on most of these. That's about what I do. Sometimes it's less, so there's less here. But we're also going to be covering it with the paper just a tiny bit. So it's a little, so that's why I usually default to about 3 inches wide for the strip of book cloth, because then it's going to get on here. So this is way wide. So if you look at that, that would be a ton of book cloth on each side, and I don't want that. But I've already cut the height. And this piece is not very square, so I'm going to just square this up. The one edge is pretty square, but then I'm going to just straighten this up on this side. And then I'll cut it 3 inches wide just to start, because we are also going to glue this on and then trim it. So we're going to be exact once we've got it on there. So that's why, you know, you want to be close and you want to have things to approximately the right size, but then you are going to trim this up very even on each side later. So, all right, so there's my piece. So it's the height of the board plus 1.5 inches, and it's 3 inches wide, because that's what I just did, like that. Oh, was my phone doing something weird then? I don't know if you guys could see that. I think my phone was ringing. So I don't know if you could see that on the screen or not. So I apologize if that happened. Okay, so made our book cloth, and I'll just hold on and we'll do the other pieces as we go. So I just need a little scrap piece to glue, and we're going to glue this onto the case. So this is going to get glued. Let me just kind of show you. This is going to get glued out. This is going to get completely glued out, and then we're going to lay this in place over the spine. And we're not going to worry too much about getting it perfectly centered, but we'll approximate it, and then we're going to trim that so that it is even, but you don't have to put it on evenly, because that's almost impossible to do. So no need. So we're going to glue this out. First, I'm going to throw my brush across the room. Okay, no problem. Picked it up. So we're going to glue that out. Having a very real book arts experience right now. Dropping stuff. Getting confused about terminology. All that stuff. All right, so just glue that up. And then this kind of slid over, so I'm going to just whip it up so that no glue got on it. And then I always just fold that up and get it out of my way. Because I'm working in such a small space, I just start piling tools. Okay, so this is all gluey. And now I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to put it in place. So what I usually do is just kind of look at it so that it looks centered, and then I just slide it up. And then I'm just trying to pull it into place, head and tail, so that it's about even head and tail up here and down here. And then I'm going to go ahead and lay it down. So what I usually do is work it down in the center first with my bone folder. Sometimes I don't, sometimes I use my finger, but it's better if you use your bone folder, because you're going to be able to get it tight. This particular book cloth that I'm using is really thick. Yours is probably not going to look as thick as this. Canapetta, I think it's called. That's the brand. And it's a thick one. It's great because it's very forgiving as far as glue and things like that, but it's also thick. You have to kind of balance what you want. Okay, so once I get it worked down, then I can lay it over. So that's a small groove, a small little edge on this board, because my board is not that thick, but I just want it to be tight. So I am taking my time, and then bone fold it down. And then I can walk it down on this side into the groove, but it's almost like I'm following up behind it to push it down. Little pieces of lint and stuff on there. Okay. And now I want to, you see, I got some glue on my mat, so I'll just take a second and just wipe that off. And then I'm going to roll it over the head and tail of the book. So I'm just going to use the tabletop to do that. And then I'll flip it and do it this way, but I actually want this towards me. And then I can walk this down. And I usually try to start in the center and walk it over. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. And if you kind of take too long and there's the glue dries, you can always just lay it down and glue it up again. But this is still wet, so it's okay. And then I usually come back, and especially in those corners, try to make sure it's glued down. And I'm also trying to find the spine. So I'm gluing, like making sure the book cloth is glued down against, see what I'm talking about? So that's the spine piece in there. So I'm going ahead and working the cloth down tight against that. So that when it dries, it's not gonna have air underneath it. Okay. All right, so this, I mean, this actually looks pretty even, but it's not. I can see like a little bit of a wobble here, and this is not even, it's not straight. So now we're gonna cut this and trim it like I told you. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna measure out how much book cloth I want to show. I usually do about 3/4, 5/8, half an inch, something like that. I think I'm gonna do a 1/2 inch today. So what I'm doing is I am measuring from the edge of the board out. So I'm gonna do 1/2 an inch. So I'm just gonna make a tick mark. And on this cloth, I gotta make pretty solid tick mark because I can't see it very well. 1/2 an inch. And then same thing on the other side. 1/2 an inch out. And then 1/2 an inch out. And that's just what's glued on the board directly. So you have to consider, like, you're not only gonna, so this measurement across from the spine of the book is about 5/8. And that, but what's on the board, what's glued down is probably about 1/2 an inch underneath there. 3/8 is what's showing on the board only. I'm not looking at this part. I'm just looking at this little section here. So these are just things that if you get into this and you want to make a bunch of books, you can start to understand how it's going to look in the end. But I'm just pointing out that you're going to see more cloth because you're going to see what's on the spine and what's in the groove, and then you're going to see what's on the board as well. All I'm cutting right now is what's on the board. Okay, so I made those tick marks, and again, I'm going to put my knife into one of them and then line it up and cut. And so I just do a couple of cuts because I'm not cutting all the way. I just want to cut through the material. And then I will take my knife. I can see where I've made the cut, and I'm going to go up over the top and down the inside. And I'm not super worried about being exact here. And then we're going to peel this. So I'm going to do it on the other side. So I see where my cut is, and I just kind of put my knife into the cut and then go up over the top and then down the back. And then I'm going to pull this up and peel it. So you can see on this cloth, there's a lot of paper on there. So I don't want the paper to be part of it. So if it starts to tear, I might try to grab it. And if a little bit of the board comes up, I would rather that happen than have paper under there. Because depending on what your material is that you're covering with, you can see that little edge of the paper, even though it's so thin. I'm not as worried about it inside. I'm not going to worry about that. But out here, I don't want that paper to show. So I'm going to peel that up, take that up. And again, I'm not super worried about the inside, so I'm not going to spend time on that because this is all going to be interior and it's cased in. You're not going to see that. Okay, so that's one side done. So I'm just going to bone fold any of that little torn, the surface of the book board, bone fold that down smooth. And then I cut the other side. So I put my blade into the mark that I made and then line it up. And then cut. So just a couple of passes with the knife. And then come back, turn it over, cut inside, go across the top. And again, if it starts, see, that's like really going with, sometimes I'll just take my knife and split it so that I can pick something up. And then it will peel right. I just don't want to have that paper on there. If it starts to tear it up on the inside, I mean, I don't want to go crazy and just let it rip it to shreds, but if there's a little tear on the inside, I'm not so worried about fixing that. Okay. And then bone fold it here. So now we've got the even trim. So it looks like there's paper still, but that's just the camera picking up the light. It's like the material's a little bit lighter, I guess, once you peel off the surface. Yeah, but that's okay. Okay, so now we're going to cut and glue on our last bit of material. So this is my cover paper, and I know I've got, this is the only piece I have left, and I know I've got enough to cover the width. I wasn't sure about the height, so I actually cut this a little bit. Oh, it's actually right. So I needed it to be the height of the board, and all I've done is folded this in half so that I could know that I have enough material. So I'm going to be cutting this in half, the height, and I've got plenty of room here. So I've got the height of the board plus 1.5 inches. So that's correct. So now all I need to do is just cut this. So it needs to be the height of the board plus 1.5 inches tall. So let me cut this. I'm going to go ahead and just trim this off, this little piece. And then this is my 2 heights. So I just folded it, and I'm just going to cut on that fold like that. So these are my 2 pieces that I had cut for the cover. So they need to be the height of the board plus 1.5 inches, and then the width. So what you need to consider is that you're going to cover a little bit of the book cloth, and then you want to have enough material for a turn in. So what I usually do is sometimes if you know you're going to have enough book cloth there, you can do just the width of the board because you know that you're going to pull it out and then you're going to have enough at the edge. But a good way to do it is probably the width of the board plus 1/2 inch. So for that, and I think this is not a regular measurement anymore, I'm just going to put this on and then do the same thing I did with the height, which is to just put it on here. So I'm just laying it from one board edge to the next and then adding a 1/2 inch to it. And that's going to be the width. And then I'm going to just cut that with my triangle. So the width of the board plus 1/2 inch is going to give you plenty. And then this one, I could really just transfer it. Because again, we're going to be turning this in, you know, at the edges. And so it's not that I don't care that it's not neat. I'm trying to be neat, but I'm also like, well, this isn't the finished piece. This isn't the finished edges that I'm going to use. Sometimes I'll even like tear the paper down. And in fact, I think I did here. But that's a fine edge. It's not completely machine cut or even knife cut, but that's fine. It's not super messy and it's okay. So these are my 2 cover pieces. And again, I'll go over that one more time. So it's the width of the board plus 1/2 inch. That's just a general rule. And now when I imagine when I'm gluing this down, I'm actually going to, my turn in is going to be this much. And then my head and tail, it just needs to be centered. And so I'm going to have this much at the head to turn in and this much at the tail to turn in. So that's what these measurements are, is about the finished result of, you know, the paper that you cut. And so you just need to know that it's the height plus 1.5 inches, and that's going to allow that turn in. And then the width plus 1/2 inch is an approximation because it could be too much. Let's imagine that this book cloth came out to here. Then I'd have this is how much turn in I would have. So you really are going to determine that by how you're going to treat your materials. And so, but I'm just giving you a general rule so that then you could make any size because it's that proportion. It's the height plus 1/2 inch, the width plus 1.5, sorry, height plus 1.5, and then the width plus 1/2 inch. So That's the point of that. So now we're going to put these pieces on. So we've got to glue these out completely. So I'm going to just rotate my book because I'm going to glue it and then I'm going to lay this down like that. So I just kind of set myself up. And then I need my newsprint. So I usually kind of look at what I'm going to do. Is this what I want? Do I want that? I think I like this. So I'm going to go this way with it. So I'm just getting ready so that I can glue because it's a gluey piece of paper and it's like kind of scary. But you can do it. And plus we're using this Canson paper, probably, I hope you guys are. And it's a little bit stiffer than a lot of cover papers that people might use. And so it's not gonna glue onto itself very easily because it's a pastel paper. It can get wet with glue. Okay. And you can see because the way this is curving that my grain is running this way, which is grain long. And that's what I want. And that's gonna match the cover here. So I can pick this up and I get my piece of paper folded and out of my way. And then I'm gonna put this down. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of center this head and tail, and then I'm gonna overlap the book cloth just a tiny bit, like a 1/16 of an inch. If you want, you can actually measure that 1/16 of an inch and make a tick mark, and then just cover the tick marks when you're laying it down. So I'm just kind of lifting it and checking that it looks even on each side. And then I'll go ahead and bone fold it down gently. And this is another one. I could have put an inset here. You know how we've done that. I could peel out. I could still do it on this side if I wanted to cut an inset and peel before I covered it. I could definitely do that. And so here you can see how much I actually have a little bit too much turn in here, but that's okay. This is not crazy, so I'm not going to worry about it. And there's where I'm going to do, I need my scissors. You can do it with an X-Acto as well. I can miter that corner, just do that little divot point. If you guys can see that little dimple, and then I'm going to cut outside of that. That. And then make the dimple here and cut outside of that. If you ever get glue, just kind of take your hand and wipe that off. Okay, and then I'm going to make my turn in. So I do the tail and the head. You can go ahead and bone fold that, make sure I get a sharp edge. And then out here, so I turned in the tail and head, and now I'm gonna do that little tuck at the corner where you can roll in, push it down, and then you can fold in your forage. And I'm just using the tabletop to help me get a smooth fold and a crisp edge like that. You can see that's a good little corner there. You can see this is why we do the forage last, because then you have this really clean forage because you've tucked the material under and in at the forage and it looks really nice. So that's the point of doing it in that order. Okay, so there's one side and now I'll do the other one. So again, I can just kind of look at what I want to do. Just to be consistent, I think I'll keep that there, but that's not bad actually, this direction too. But I'm gonna lose some of it if I do that. So I'm gonna do this. Okay. Grab my newsprint, and then glue that up. I'm gonna do the same exact thing on the other side. And then I'm just going to overlap again. Oops. Center it head and tail first to make sure that's pretty close. And then just barely overlap that book cloth by about 1/16 of an inch. You've got a few minutes, you've got 60 seconds to get this down, which doesn't sound like a long time, but it's actually, you got time to kind of slide it into place. And then you can, I like to bone fold there first, or just push down there first and then kind of walk it out this way. And really, I might need to go back over and bone fold it because this is not dry, but we're going to put it under weight as well. And I'll show you that in just a second. Okay. So once I get it pretty much laid down, I can come back and do my miters. And then fold these over. Sometimes I'll just do it with my thumb on one end. And what I'm trying to do is make sure that I walk that over, kind of rock over, so that I'm gluing the front too. And then roll that in. That one I cut a little bit big. It's the miter's a little bit too far away, but that's all right. You start getting a little bigger than that though, and it can be messy. You get too much material. It looks like a wad, kind of a wad of material in the corner, which you don't want. And if you notice, I'm actually trying not to fold the spine yet, because I really want that to be dry when I do it. I've tried to do it while it's damp, and it's just not the best, because you kind of get a soft, and with this book cloth especially, it's so thick, you can really get a soft looking spine, and I don't want it to look like that. So I'm going to try to let this dry before I do the fold. And that's what you guys should do too, because you want it to look as sharp as possible at the spine. And this is what I'm talking about here. And this one's kind of rounded a little bit. See, the thinner the book cloth though, the more sharp it's going to look. Like this is a really thin book cloth. That one's not cased all the way back. But you get like this real sharp, nice edge to it. Like right here is what I'm talking about. That. Okay, so we've covered it. This is what it looks like. I'm not going to crease it yet because I'm going to let this dry. And so what I want to do is just put this under weight. So I need my wax paper because there might be some excess glue, especially on this side. So I'm going to put my wax paper down, and then I'm going to grab and you guys can use a book or some kind of heavy, if you have a brick or something like that. Cord is hanging in the way. But that's a good thing to put it under. I think this board is big enough. I might have to go grab some more boards. Yeah, it's pretty close. I'm going to go with it. Okay, so you just want to keep it under weight to dry. You know, if you can wait like an hour, that would be best. If you could wait overnight, that's going to be perfect. But if you don't want to do that, you can just wait like an hour or two, let that dry, and then you can do the next step, which is going to be casing in the book. And we will do that in a separate video. And I'll instead of starting to talk about it now, I'll just let you guys watch the next video, how to case in the multi-section flat back. All right, there you go. We're done. Thanks.